Release the illusion of a flawless life and begin to embrace the true beauty of your present reality. Every single sunrise is a loving invitation for you to reconnect deeply with yourself, to deliberately focus your precious energy on what you can truly transform, which are your own thoughts, your emotions, and your daily decisions. Stop looking outside of yourself for validation or for models to follow. You are already whole, and within you there exists an infinite source of wisdom and immense power. When you choose to direct your mind on what you can genuinely love and tenderly care for within yourself, you leave behind the overwhelming need to constantly compare yourself, to harshly judge yourself, or to get distracted by things you simply cannot control. Instead of handing over your power to conflict or your ego, you decide to nurture your inner peace with healthy thoughts, kind words, and intentional actions. Challenges will continue to inevitably appear, but now you will see them as great teachers. You are not here to resist the flow of life, but rather to gracefully dance with it from a place of profound self-love. Repeat to yourself, "I am the owner of my mind, and I choose thoughts that empower me. I deserve to live in a state of peace." In this way, moment by moment, you take the helm of your own destiny with unwavering confidence and boundless compassion. True happiness is not found at the end of a road, nor is it hidden in the hands of others, nor is it promised by external achievements. It is a gentle feeling that is born softly from within you. Imagine that you are a traveler crossing the desert, but this time you carry with you an internal spring, a silent wellspring that nourishes you with every step you take. You don't need to chase mirages because you have awakened to the incredible power of your own heart. When you stop searching externally for what you can only create internally, everything changes. You discover that peace isn't a destination, but a conscious daily choice, that love isn't something to be conquered, but rather to be remembered and cherished, and that fullness doesn't depend on what you possess, but on how much you allow yourself to just be. Say to yourself, "I am my home. Within me I find everything I need to be happy." From this profound space of deep acceptance and genuine self-compassion, there is no longer any desert that can wear you out, because you are the oasis. The deepest truth is also the simplest one to understand. Your inner peace does not depend on anything external. You can surround yourself with success, recognition, and material abundance. But if restlessness resides within you, those achievements will transform into golden chains that hold you down. What does not nourish your soul will ultimately drain you completely. What is not born from self-love can never truly sustain you. Remember, there is no trophy that can soothe a wounded heart, nor is there any applause that can fill an emotional void. True freedom begins when you dare to look inward, to heal your thoughts, and to release the constant need for external validation. From that place, true abundance is born, the kind that is felt in your chest, not in your pocket. Affirm to yourself, "My peace is sacred. I choose thoughts that elevate me. Everything I need to feel whole is already within me." By returning to yourself, you discover that the greatest treasure has always been your own serenity, your self-love, and your conscious presence. Genuine happiness is not found in what happens to you, but rather in how you choose to live through it. Have you ever noticed how two people can face the exact same situation and have completely different responses? What makes the difference isn't the event itself, but the perspective with which you observe it. It is that perspective, that intimate interpretation, that can either liberate you or trap you. Instead of reacting out of habit, what would happen if you stopped to feel, to understand, to ask yourself what part of you needs to grow? When someone rejects you, you could use that moment to reconnect with your self-worth instead of doubting it. And when criticisms arise, are you willing to listen to yourself before defending yourself? It's not about controlling the world around you, but about knowing yourself well enough not to get swept away by it. Ask yourself, from where do I want to act? Am I honoring my peace, or am I giving it away without even realizing it? The difference between suffering and growth is often in that single decision. In life, you can watch how something moves away, how a chapter ends, or a person leaves. But what happens if in the midst of those losses, you choose not to let go of the most valuable thing yourself? You are not what leaves or what changes. You are the one who remains, who decides how to navigate through what happens. Have you ever asked yourself if you are walking through your life with awareness or simply surviving amidst circumstances? Happiness is not a distant goal or a destination reserved for perfect days. It is a way of walking, an attitude that you choose even when the ground is shaking beneath your feet. Can you allow yourself to find beauty in the messiness? Can you remain standing without hardening your inner self? There are moments that are completely beyond your control, but your response, your internal stance remains yours, and that is an act of silent power. It's knowing that the world may change, but you can still choose how you want to feel, think, and act. What are you going to choose today? True inner growth is born when we stop resisting what we cannot change and begin to embrace what is within our power to transform. It's not about hardening your heart, but about strengthening your soul. Serenity is not passivity, it is profound clarity. It's knowing how to distinguish between what deserves our energy and what is better to let go of. That is the very essence of deep freedom. Not needing the world to conform to our expectations in order to be at peace, but cultivating a stability that sprouts from within, like a tree with firm roots that stands tall even when the wind shakes its branches. Instead of reacting impulsively, you learn to act from a place of awareness, from a center that does not depend on external chaos to remain calm. The practice of living with integrity and inner strength is not always easy, but it is deeply liberating. It requires us to look with honesty at what perturbs us, to take responsibility for our choices, and to stop putting our happiness in the hands of others. Thus, step by step, a life is forged that does not need conditions in order to flourish. Inner peace is not a luxury reserved for easy days or a privilege that depends on everything going as you expect. It is a silent choice that is built from within, even and especially in the midst of chaos. There are people who have lost a loved one, who have received devastating diagnoses, or who have seen an entire life fall apart in a matter of days, and yet have managed to find a corner of calm within themselves. How is that even possible? Imagine someone who has lost everything: their home, their family, their financial stability. Around them there are only ruins, broken promises, and an overwhelming sense of emptiness. However, instead of surrendering to resentment or fear, they decide not to give up their last refuge, their mind. They decide not to allow the pain to take absolute control. They choose to breathe, to accept, to rebuild from the only thing they still possess, their inner self. That is the difference between being dragged down by circumstances or passing through them with dignity. It's recognizing that even if you can't control what happens externally, you can always choose how you position yourself internally. Inner peace is not a forced smile or the denial of pain, but a conscious decision not to abandon your essence, even when everything else seems to be falling apart. What if the world changes, but you decide to remain connected to yourself? And what if, instead of sinking into despair, you choose to make that dark moment a seed of light? Because in the midst of chaos, you can pause, take a deep breath, and ask yourself, what part of me needs to be embraced right now? What loving thought can I choose at this very moment? When you choose to respond from your center, from that space within you where there is still calm, even if there is noise outside, you begin to discover a strength you didn't know you had. Something within you becomes wiser, more compassionate, more free, and it is there, right there, where true transformation begins. Because no matter what happens, You can still choose how to think, how to act, and how to love, and that absolutely no one can ever take away from you. Inner criticism is like a hidden voice that repeats over and over again that you are not enough, that you should have done more, that you are failing. And even though we often believe that this voice pushes us to improve, what it actually does is feed our fear, weaken our self-esteem, and lock us in a prison of self-demand. How many times have you spoken to yourself harshly, hoping it would make you stronger, only to end up exhausted and full of doubt? Compassion, on the other hand, offers you another path. It is not indulgence or an excuse. It is loving awareness. It is looking at your mistakes without condemnation and asking yourself, what did I need in that moment? What can I learn without punishing myself? Compassion does not eliminate your desire to grow, but it does heal the way you accompany yourself during that process. And when you learn to treat yourself with tenderness instead of judgment, you stop fighting with yourself and begin to build a solid relationship with your own soul. Imagine how your life would change if every time you failed, you could tell yourself, I am learning and that's okay. Not to stay where you are, but to move forward with more peace, more clarity, more love. Because only when you stop beating yourself up inside can you truly begin to flourish, and that is where your freedom truly begins. Nothing truly profound changes in life unless the way you see yourself is transformed first. Everything starts at the invisible root of your inner perception. You can strive in 1,000 directions, chase goals, build relationships, accumulate achievements, but if the image you hold of yourself remains tinged by judgment, guilt, or insecurity, any progress will be fragile and fleeting, because sooner or later you will return to the same internal place, the one from which you think, decide, and act. Seeing yourself with loving eyes is not a superficial exercise in self-esteem. It is a vital necessity for living with fullness. When you perceive yourself as insufficient, you limit your possibilities without even realizing it. You don't ask for what you need. You don't express what you feel. You don't dare to grow for fear of failing. But when you begin to recognize yourself as someone valuable, worthy, and in constant evolution, life begins to expand, not because everything magically changes outside, but because you stop sabotaging yourself from within. Changing the way you see yourself is, in essence, healing. It is leaving behind the learned perspective of the past, the one born from pain, comparison, and demand, and building a new, more conscious, more compassionate, and freer way of inhabiting yourself. From there, change stops being a struggle and becomes a natural expression of who you are. Because when you see yourself truthfully, when you recognize yourself without distortions, your life begins to reflect that clarity, and what once seemed unattainable becomes possible. Acceptance is not resignation. It is the most courageous act of saying, this is what it is, and from here I choose to move forward. It's looking a situation straight in the face, no matter how painful or uncomfortable it may be, and stopping the waste of energy on denying the obvious. To accept is not to surrender. It is to stop fighting against what has already happened in order to start building from a more conscious and firm place. It is the starting point of real change. Let's think about the case of Laura, a woman who for years fought against the idea that her marriage was broken. She would try hard, pretend, blame herself, and exhaust herself trying to make everything go back to the way it was before. But the more she resisted the truth, the more pain she accumulated. It was only when, in the midst of the most brutal silence, she was able to say to herself, "This no longer works," that something changed within her, not because she resigned herself to living with sadness, but because she stopped feeding an illusion. And in that deep acceptance, she found the courage to separate, rebuild, and start a new chapter with dignity. Accepting means looking without fear at what hurts, not to stay in that place, but to stop fighting with the past and begin to walk toward a more authentic life. What is denied is repeated. What is accepted is transformed. That's why only when Laura stopped resisting did she truly begin to heal, because all true transformation begins right there in the honesty of accepting what is. You are enough, even in the midst of your process, not when everything is resolved, nor when you reach a certain goal, nor when your wounds disappear. You are enough now, just as you are, with your doubts, your ongoing lessons, your good days, and also your difficult ones. You don't need to be complete to deserve love, respect, or rest. The idea that you only have value when everything about you is perfect is an illusion that only reinforces self-demand and silent pain. Think of someone going through a deep grief, like Anna, who lost her mother suddenly. For months she felt broken, paralyzed, and had no energy for anything. She would judge herself for not being better, for not moving forward faster, for not having the strength to do what she once did with ease, until she understood that her pain did not make her less valuable, nor did her sadness make her less worthy. The grief was not a weakness, but a testament to how much she had loved, and in that understanding, she was able to start treating herself with more gentleness, giving herself permission to feel, to heal, to simply be. Or like Daniel, who after leaving a toxic relationship felt that he had lost his identity. He blamed himself for not having seen it sooner, for having allowed so much. But step by step he understood that he didn't have to wait to be his old self again to deserve a new life. He began to recognize himself not as someone broken, but as someone brave for having left, for moving on, for rebuilding himself. Being in process is not a sign of weakness. It is a display of humanity. We live in a world that applauds results, speed, and immediate clarity, but real life doesn't always follow that rhythm. Healing, learning, rebuilding, all of that takes time, and during that time you can feel vulnerable, uncertain, incomplete, but none of that takes away from your value. To see someone in process means that you are alive, awake, willing to look inside yourself, even if you don't like everything you find. It's choosing to move forward, even when the ground is unstable. It's recognizing that even though you are not yet where you want to be, you are walking towards it, and that is worthy of respect. In the midst of confusion, pain, grief, or frustration, your essence remains intact. It doesn't matter if today you can't handle everything. You are still valuable because it's not about what you do, but about who you are. Grief, for example, can leave you without the desire to get up, without clear answers, without apparent purpose. But the simple act of feeling it, of going through it with honesty, is already a form of silent strength. The slowness with which you heal does not speak of your weakness, but of the depth of what you are facing. You don't need to rush or fit into anyone's timeline. Every step you take, no matter how small, is honoring your process, remembering that your value does not change according to your achievements or your certainties, is what allows you to move forward with more freedom. That truth, that you are enough now, in the midst of chaos, doubt, or pain, becomes an internal anchor, a firm foundation from which you can continue to grow, not because everything is resolved, but because you no longer need to prove your worth to deserve peace, love, or respect. You already are, and that is enough. Focusing on yourself is not selfishness. It is emotional survival. It is making the decision to stop waiting for the world to give you permission to move forward, and to start acting even if you don't have all the answers. Changing your life begins when you accept that no one will come to rescue you, that the perfect moment will not arrive, and that the only way to get out of the place you are in is with decisive action. Even if it hurts at first, even if you are scared, even if you don't know where to begin. Forcing yourself to act is not about being rigid with yourself, but about committing to yourself out of love. It's telling yourself, I'm not going to abandon myself anymore. I'm not going to keep waiting until I feel ready. Today I'm starting, because every step you take toward yourself, even if it's uncertain, clumsy, or slow, is a declaration of power, a way of telling life, I'm here, and this time I'm not going to let go of my own hand. When you stop looking outward and turn your gaze inward, you begin to discover a strength you didn't know you had, a clarity that doesn't come from understanding everything, but from daring to move despite not understanding. To act for yourself, for your well-being, for your healing, for your dreams, is not to meet other people's expectations, but to honor the most sacred commitment, the one you have with yourself. Focusing on yourself is ultimately an act of love. It's building, step by step, a life that doesn't exclude you, a life where you are not last on the list. And when that happens, change stops being a wish and becomes an inevitable consequence. Life does not happen to you as a random accident or as a chain of events outside of your control. Life responds to you, to your energy, to your decisions, to the beliefs that you hold in silence and repeat every day, often without even realizing it. Every thought, every unresolved emotion, every action you choose or postpone sends a message, and that message creates the ground you walk on. When you live on autopilot, it seems like everything happens to you without warning. But when you become conscious, when you start to observe what you think, what you say, what you allow, you realize something essential. You are not a passive spectator. You are an active creator of your own experience, and not out of guilt, but out of responsibility. Because it's not about punishing yourself for what you have lived through, but about empowering yourself to choose differently from today onward. If you walk from a place of fear, you will attract situations that reinforce that fear. If you treat yourself with a sense of worthlessness, the world will show you reflections of that same perspective. But if you begin to live from a place of confidence, from a deep respect for yourself, you will notice that doors that once seemed closed begin to open. Not because the world has changed, but because you began to show up differently, and life inevitably responds to that. Your value is not tied to your achievements, your titles, or how much you do in a single day. You are not more valuable for being busy or less valuable for being on pause. We live in a society that measures worth by productivity, that rewards efficiency, but forgets the essential truth. Your value is not earned, it already comes with you. You don't have to prove anything to deserve love, respect, or dignity. Your very existence is proof that you are enough. There are those who fall into the trap of doing to feel like they are worth something, that if they don't meet expectations, if they don't reach certain goals, then they have no right to feel good about themselves. But that race is endless and exhausting, because there will never be an external goal that can fill an internal void. True security is born when you stop seeking validation and begin to remember who you are beyond the result. Someone who is whole even in process, worthy even when they make mistakes, valuable even in their moments of silence. The most powerful recognition is not the one that comes from outside, but the one that springs from your own consciousness. When you stop defining yourself by what you do and recognize yourself for who you are, a person in constant evolution, with light and shadow, with wounds and wisdom, everything changes. You no longer live to fit in, but to express yourself. You no longer demand perfection to be loved. You allow yourself to be because you already know that you deserve love. And that understanding is liberating. It returns you to yourself. It allows you to live from a more real, more human, more peaceful place. Every emotion you feel has a reason for being. It is not there to bother you, to interrupt your day, or to make you feel weak. It is there to tell you something. It is your body, your soul, and your story speaking to you in a different language. Sadness might be showing you a need for rest or for some unexpressed grief. Anger might be signaling a boundary that has been crossed, or an injustice that has been ignored. Fear, far from being an enemy, is sometimes a guardian that asks you to look more carefully. But when you try to silence what you feel with distractions, with demands, with rushing, you disconnect from yourself. Ignoring an emotion doesn't make it disappear, it only makes it deeper, more silent, more destructive. Listening to it, on the other hand, is an act of presence. It is saying, I am here for myself, even when I don't fully understand. It is opening up a space to feel without judgment, without the need to resolve everything immediately. You are capable of choosing again and again, no matter how many times you have fallen, doubted, or made a mistake. There is no limited number of opportunities to start over within you. Every day, every moment, every breath offers you the possibility to choose yourself again, to change direction, to correct your path without punishment or shame. You are not tied to your past. You are not your mistakes, nor your past decisions, nor the paths that did not turn out as you had hoped. What you did yesterday does not define your value today. You can always take a new direction, because growing is not moving in a straight line. It is realizing when something no longer resonates with you and having the courage to turn, not because you failed, but because you are learning to listen to yourself more deeply. And that is one of the most honest ways of focusing on yourself, giving yourself permission to change without guilt, knowing that you can return to yourself as many times as you need, not to remake yourself from a place of demand, but to reconnect with yourself from a place of awareness. Every choice you make with self-love, with responsibility, with presence, brings you closer to the life you truly deserve, and it is never too late to choose again. You don't need to be perfect to deserve love or respect. You don't have to have all your wounds healed, your emotions resolved, or your life in order. The idea that you must first fix yourself in order to be worthy is a lie that only creates more pain. You are worthy now, even with your doubts, your contradictions, and your parts that are still under construction. True love, the kind that transforms and nurtures, is not given as a prize, it is recognized as a right. Learning to live without demanding perfection from yourself is also learning to live without fear. It is understanding that respect is not earned by meeting expectations, but is affirmed through authenticity. The more real you are with yourself, the more you allow yourself to be just as you are, the more solid the bond with yourself becomes, because you stop begging for approval and start setting boundaries from a place of clarity. And when you speak to yourself with love, something changes deeply inside you. You are no longer an internal enemy or a relentless judge. You become a refuge. Your body feels it. Your mind is relieved. Your heart calms down. The loving internal dialogue not only comforts you, it rebuilds you. Your thoughts become softer, your decisions more conscious, and your energy lighter. This is how true healing begins. Not with grand gestures, but with the silent commitment to treat yourself well, even on your worst days. You are not here to achieve perfection. You are here to remember that you are already worthy, and that from that recognition, you can build a freer, more honest, more authentic life for yourself. Fear is not a barrier. It is a signal. It is the voice that appears when you are about to cross a threshold, when you are moving away from what is safe and familiar to get closer to a more complete version of yourself. It is not there to punish you, but to warn you that you are touching an important emotional boundary. And the most transformative thing happens right there, at that edge where fear and the desire to grow meet. We often confuse fear with "I can't," when in reality it is "this is new to me." Clara, for example, had rejected multiple job opportunities because they involved public speaking. Fear made her feel small, incapable, and exposed. But one day she understood that it wasn't her voice that was trembling, it was her history, and she chose to act despite the fear. She wasn't perfect, but she was brave, and in that bravery she found confidence. Each new talk became more natural, not because the fear went away, but because she learned to move with it, not against it. The same thing happens with our emotional wounds. You can spend years living with the pain of a loss, a betrayal, or an abandonment, repeating the same defenses, reacting out of fear that it will hurt again. But there too is a choice to stay in the wound or to choose to heal. Javier chose the latter. He stopped justifying himself, stopped distracting himself with excuses, and began a real process of transformation. It was not immediate, but it was profound. He learned to set healthy boundaries, to trust again, to recognize himself beyond what had been done to him. Healing is not forgetting. Healing is deciding that you no longer want to carry the pain as your identity. It's choosing a new narrative, one in which you have the power to respond differently. It's not about denying what you have lived through, but about making space for a more conscious and loving version of yourself, one that recognizes that fear is part of the journey but is not the one driving, and that wounds can mark you but not define you. Fear becomes smaller when you act. The wound is relieved when you look at it without judgment, and you become stronger every time you choose to move forward from a place of awareness, not from repetition. You can continue to live from what hurt you, or begin to build from what you are capable of healing today. That choice is in your hands as many times as you need it. Challenges do not arrive to destroy you, even if it sometimes feels that way. They arrive to show you parts of yourself that you had not yet discovered. They are not the end of your journey, but doors to a stronger, more conscious, and more authentic version of yourself. It's not what happens to you that defines you, but what you do with it. Pain is not your identity. It is part of the journey, but it is not the destination. Imagine someone like Lucia, who went through a devastating divorce after years of silence, frustration, and emotional exhaustion. At first, she felt that she had failed, that her story was proof of what she had not been able to sustain. But over time, in the midst of her grief, she began to rediscover herself. She started to ask herself what she needed, what she had ignored about herself, what parts of her essence she had put aside to please others. What seemed like a loss led her to reconnect with her own voice. The challenge did not define her as a broken woman. It revealed her as a brave woman who dared to start over. In the same way, your story, no matter how much it hurts, can be the fertile ground for your transformation. The abandonment, betrayal, loneliness, or loss you experienced can become the roots of your healing. Not because the pain is beautiful, but because you decide what to do with it. You can use it to close yourself off, or to expand, to justify your suffering, or to build a new version of yourself. When you understand that your story does not have to be a condemnation but a seed of growth, everything changes. You don't need to deny what happened, but you are also not obligated to continue being the same person who was born from that pain. You can use your wounds as a guide, not as a prison. And so each challenge becomes a reminder inside of you there is a strength that is only activated when life pushes you to discover it. You are not what happened to you, you are what you chose to build with it, and that is what truly defines you. How are you all today? How do you feel? Really? After listening to this message, do you believe this video can help you feel more energized, with more clarity, with more inner strength? I would love to read your thoughts. Write in the comments how you feel now and how you are going to start seeing life from this moment on. This is a space to share, without fear, without judgment, without masks. Thank you for being here. This channel is not just any place. It is a refuge where real people with real stories who are on the journey of growing, healing, and building a more meaningful life come together. Here you are not judged, you are accompanied. We are a solid community, united by the deep desire to improve from the inside out. If this video gave you something valuable, I invite you to like it, subscribe, and activate the bell so you don't miss the next content. And if you know someone who is going through a difficult time, please share it. Sometimes a single word can make a big difference. And as Louise Hay used to say, No matter what you've gone through in the past, you can start fresh right this very moment. I send you a big hug. We continue to walk together here.